Detective Inspector Sarah Matthews received the anonymous tip on a cold Tuesday morning in October. The voice on the phone was nervous, speaking in hushed tones about a hidden property in the countryside that belonged to someone very important. The caller claimed there were valuable items hidden there, items that rightfully belonged to the crown. Sarah had been investigating missing royal artifacts for 3 years. Her team at Scotland Yard's Art and Antiquities Unit had recovered several stolen pieces, but nothing compared to what this tip might lead to. The caller mentioned Queen Camilla by name, which immediately caught Sarah's attention. Since King Charles's passing the previous year, there had been numerous rumors about missing royal jewels and personal items. The address led them to a quiet village in Gloucestershire, where an old stone cottage sat hidden behind tall hedges and ancient oak trees. The property appeared abandoned from the outside, with overgrown gardens and darkened windows. However, the security cameras mounted discreetly around the perimeter suggested otherwise. Sarah's team spent 2 days conducting surveillance before applying for a search warrant. They watched as a black car visited the property twice, staying only briefly each time. The driver wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, making identification impossible from their distance. On the second visit, they noticed the person carried what appeared to be a small bag into the house. Judge Harrison granted the search warrant after reviewing the evidence. The anonymous tip, combined with the suspicious activity they had observed, provided sufficient grounds for the search. Sarah knew this case could be significant, but she had no idea just how extraordinary their discovery would prove to be. On the morning of the raid, Sarah assembled her best team. Detective Constable James Wilson specialized in jewelry and precious metals. Forensics expert Dr. Emily Chen would handle any evidence collection. Security specialist Mark Thompson would deal with the property's alarm systems and cameras. The local police provided additional support, understanding the sensitive nature of the operation. The cottage stood silent as they approached. Thompson quickly disabled the security system, which was surprisingly sophisticated for such a modest-looking property. The front door required 2 different keys, and Sarah noted the heavy-duty locks that seemed out of place on a country cottage. Inside, the house appeared ordinary at first glance. The furniture was expensive but not ostentatious. Family photographs lined the mantelpiece, showing various royal events and private moments. Sarah recognized several faces from recent royal gatherings, including Queen Camilla herself, in more casual settings. The ground floor revealed little of interest initially. The kitchen was well stocked, suggesting someone had been living there recently. Fresh flowers sat in a vase on the dining table, and the refrigerator contained current newspapers and fresh food. Wilson examined the rooms methodically, looking for any signs of hidden compartments or safes. Dr. Chen documented everything with photographs and careful notes. She observed that the house had been lived in recently, with personal items scattered naturally throughout the rooms. Books lay open on tables and coffee cups sat in the sink. Someone had left in a hurry, or simply stepped out temporarily. The breakthrough came when Thompson noticed something unusual about the study. The wooden paneling along one wall appeared newer than the rest, and when he pressed against it, he heard a hollow sound. Further investigation revealed a hidden mechanism that opened a concealed door. Behind the false wall lay a small room that took everyone's breath away. Shelves lined the walls, displaying an extraordinary collection of jewelry, ornaments, and precious objects. Even in the dim light, the gems sparkled magnificently. Wilson immediately recognized several pieces from official royal inventories that had been reported missing over the past 2 years. Sarah felt her heart racing as she realized the magnitude of their discovery. This was not just a collection of valuable items, but pieces of British royal heritage that had seemingly vanished without explanation. The room contained dozens of items, from elaborate necklaces to ornate ceremonial pieces. Dr. Chen began the careful process of documenting each item. She photographed everything from multiple angles and started creating a detailed inventory. Many pieces bore the hallmarks of famous royal jewelers, and several matched descriptions from insurance claims filed by the royal household. Among the most striking discoveries was an emerald and diamond tiara that had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II. The piece had been reported missing from the royal collection 6 months earlier, with no explanation for its disappearance. Next to it sat a sapphire brooch that had been a wedding gift to Princess Diana, also missing from recent inventories. Wilson handled each piece with extreme care, using specialized gloves and tools. His expertise allowed him to quickly identify the craftsmanship and approximate values. Many items appeared to be worth hundreds of thousands of pounds each, with some potentially valued in the millions. As they worked through the secret room, Sarah began to piece together a troubling picture. The items were not randomly collected but seemed carefully selected from different parts of the royal collection. Someone with intimate knowledge of the royal jewels had systematically removed these pieces over time. The discovery raised immediate questions about how these items had come to be in this secret location. Were they stolen or had they been moved here for safekeeping? The connection to Queen Camilla suggested a more complex situation than simple theft. Sarah contacted her supervisor immediately. This discovery would require careful handling, given the royal connections and the potential implications for the monarchy. The investigation would need to proceed with extreme discretion, while ensuring all evidence was properly preserved. By late afternoon, they had documented over 60 separate items in the hidden room. Each piece told a story of royal history and tradition, making their presence in this secret cottage all the more mysterious. Sarah knew this was only the beginning of what would become one of the most significant royal investigations in recent history. As they secured the scene for the night, Sarah reflected on the day's discoveries. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they began the complex process of determining how these priceless royal treasures had ended up hidden away in a quiet countryside cottage. The investigation that started with an anonymous tip had uncovered something far more significant than anyone had anticipated. The morning after the discovery brought media attention that Sarah had hoped to avoid. Someone had leaked news of the raid to the press, and reporters were already gathering outside the cottage when her team arrived. She instructed uniformed officers to establish a wider perimeter while they continued their investigation. Inside the cottage, Dr. Chen worked methodically through the hidden collection. Each piece required careful examination, photography, and documentation before being safely packaged for transport to Scotland Yard's secure facilities. The process was painstaking, but essential for maintaining the integrity of the evidence. Wilson made a disturbing discovery while examining a particularly ornate necklace. Hidden beneath the main display shelves were additional storage compartments containing authentication documents, insurance appraisals, and what appeared to be sales receipts. These papers suggested that some items had been officially removed from royal collections through legitimate channels, while others had no accompanying documentation. Sarah studied the paperwork with growing concern. Several documents bore official royal household letterhead and appeared to authorize the removal of specific items for cleaning, repair, or temporary display purposes. However, the dates on these authorizations spanned back over 18 months, far longer than typical maintenance procedures would require. Among the papers, they found correspondence that mentioned Queen Camilla by name. The letters, written on personal stationery, discussed the temporary storage of valuable items during renovation work at various royal residences. The tone was casual and familiar, suggesting the writer had a close relationship with the royal household. Detective Chief Inspector Robert Hayes arrived from London to oversee the investigation personally. The discovery was too significant to remain at the local level, and political pressure was mounting for answers. Hayes brought additional resources, including experts in royal protocol and specialists in art fraud investigation. Hayes reviewed the evidence collected so far and expressed concern about the implications. The presence of legitimate authorization documents complicated the case significantly. If some items had been properly removed from royal collections, determining which pieces were legitimately stored versus potentially stolen would require extensive investigation. The team discovered another crucial piece of evidence when Thompson found a laptop computer hidden in a kitchen cabinet. The device was password protected, but their technical specialists managed to access the files after several hours of work. The computer contained detailed inventories of the jewelry collection, complete with photographs and insurance valuations. More troubling were the email communications found on the laptop. Messages dating back 2 years showed ongoing correspondence between someone using the initials CR and various auction houses, jewelry dealers, and private collectors. The emails discussed the potential sale of several items that matched pieces found in the secret room. Dr. Chen's forensic analysis revealed fingerprints on many of the jewelry pieces in storage containers. The prints belonged to at least 3 different individuals, including one set that appeared frequently throughout the collection. Running these prints through the police database would take time, but they represented a crucial lead in identifying who had access to these items. Sarah interviewed the cottage's neighbors, hoping to learn more about the property's recent activity. Mrs. Eleanor Pemberton, who lived in the neighboring house, proved to be an observant witness. She had noticed increased activity at the cottage over the past 6 months, with visits from well-dressed individuals driving expensive cars. Mrs. Pemberton described seeing a woman who matched Queen Camilla's general appearance visiting the cottage on several occasions. However, she admitted that her eyesight was not what it once was, and she could not be completely certain of the identification. The visits typically occurred during daylight hours and appeared routine rather than secretive. The investigation took a new direction when Wilson discovered that the cottage had been purchased through a complex web of shell companies. The ownership trail led through 3 different corporations before reaching a trust fund established in the Cayman Islands. Tracing the true ownership would require international cooperation and could take weeks or months to complete. Hayes decided to interview royal household staff discreetly to determine if anyone had noticed missing items from the official collections. This required extremely careful handling to avoid causing panic or embarrassment to the royal family. The interviews were conducted off-site and presented as routine security reviews. The first breakthrough came from Margaret Foster, a long-serving member of the royal household staff, responsible for maintaining jewelry inventories. She admitted that several items had been signed out for various purposes over the past 2 years, but had never been returned to the official collections. When shown photographs of items found in the cottage, she positively identified at least 15 pieces. Foster explained that the authorization process for removing items from royal collections had become less formal in recent years. Senior members of the royal family could request items for personal use or special occasions without extensive paperwork. The trust placed in family members meant that detailed tracking was sometimes overlooked. This revelation complicated the investigation further. If items had been legitimately removed by authorized individuals, the line between proper custody and theft became increasingly blurred. Sarah realized they were dealing with a situation that involved royal privilege, family dynamics, and potentially millions of pounds worth of national treasures. The team also discovered evidence of recent renovation work at several royal residences during the time frame when items were being moved to the cottage. Official records confirmed that major restoration projects had been undertaken at Clarence House and Highgrove, both properties associated with King Charles and Queen Camilla. Dr. Chen found traces of construction dust and protective wrapping materials in the secret room, supporting the theory that items had been moved for safekeeping during renovation work. However, the presence of sales-related documentation suggested that protection was not the only motive for the secret storage. By the end of the second day, Sarah's team had documented over 80 valuable items, with several more compartments still to be explored. The cottage was proving to be far more than a simple storage location. It appeared to be the center of a complex operation involving some of Britain's most precious royal treasures. The media pressure continued to intensify, with speculation running wild about the nature of the discovery. Royal correspondents demanded answers, while political commentators discussed the potential implications for the monarchy's reputation. Sarah knew that time was running out before the investigation would be forced into the public spotlight completely. As evening approached, Hayes called a strategy meeting to plan their next steps. The investigation was entering dangerous territory, touching on sensitive issues of royal privilege and family honor. They needed to proceed carefully while ensuring that justice was served and the missing treasures were properly accounted for. The discovery at the cottage was only the beginning of what promised to be one of the most complex and politically sensitive cases in British legal history. The third day of the investigation brought unexpected developments when Sarah received a phone call from Buckingham Palace. Sir Anthony Whitmore, the Queen's private secretary, requested an immediate meeting to discuss the ongoing investigation. His tone was cordial but carried an unmistakable note of urgency that suggested the royal household was deeply concerned about the discovery. Sarah and Hayes traveled to London for the meeting, leaving Dr. Chen and Wilson to continue processing evidence at the cottage. The drive gave them time to discuss strategy for handling what was clearly becoming a politically sensitive situation. They agreed to remain focused on the facts while being respectful of royal protocol. Sir Anthony met them in his private office, a wood-paneled room lined with portraits of previous monarchs. He was accompanied by Lady Patricia Thornfield, the royal household's legal advisor, whose presence immediately signaled the seriousness of the situation. Sir Anthony explained that the royal family was aware of the investigation and wanted to cooperate, fully while protecting the monarchy's reputation. The revelation that shocked Sarah most was Sir Anthony's admission that the cottage had been known to certain members of the royal household. He explained that it had been purchased 2 years earlier as a secure storage facility during extensive renovation work at multiple royal residences. However, he claimed that the family had lost track of which items had been moved there and when they should have been returned. Lady Thornfield presented documentation showing that the cottage purchase had been authorized through proper channels, albeit through the complex corporate structure that had initially raised suspicions. She explained that such arrangements were common for royal properties to maintain privacy and security. The shell companies were legitimate tools for protecting royal assets from public scrutiny. However, Sir Anthony's next revelation was more troubling. He admitted that there had been growing concerns within the royal household about missing items from various collections. Internal audits had identified discrepancies, but the family had hoped to resolve the matter privately, without involving outside authorities. The police investigation had forced their hand. Sarah asked directly about Queen Camilla's involvement with the cottage. Sir Anthony hesitated before explaining that the Queen had indeed used the property occasionally, particularly during the stressful period following King Charles's death. She had found the quiet location helpful for private reflection and had sometimes brought personal items there for safekeeping. The distinction between personal items and crown jewels became crucial to understanding the situation. Lady Thornfield explained that the line between personal royal property and items belonging to the crown estate was often blurred. Many pieces had been given as personal gifts to royal family members over the years, while others remained officially part of the national collection. Back at the cottage, Wilson made another significant discovery in the cottage's basement. Hidden behind a false wall, they found additional storage areas containing historical documents, photographs, and what appeared to be a detailed catalog of royal jewelry dating back decades. The documents suggested someone had been systematically documenting and possibly planning the disposition of royal assets. Dr. Chen's analysis of the basement materials revealed a timeline of activity that painted a complex picture. The documentation showed that items had been moved to the cottage in several phases over 18 months. Some movements coincided with official renovation work, while others appeared to have no connection to any known royal household activities. The most disturbing discovery was a series of handwritten notes that appeared to be plans for selling certain items. The notes included contact information for auction houses, private collectors, and jewelry dealers in several countries. Estimates of sale values were written next to descriptions of specific pieces, suggesting someone had been planning to monetize parts of the collection. Sarah received an urgent call from Wilson, reporting that they had found evidence of recent visitors to the cottage. Tire tracks in the back garden were fresh, and security camera footage showed a car visiting the property the night before their raid. The timing suggested that someone had known about the impending investigation and had possibly removed additional items. The security footage was clear enough to identify the vehicle as a dark blue Bentley with partial license plate visibility. A quick check revealed that the car was registered to a company that provided transportation services to high-profile clients, including members of the royal family. This connection deepened the investigation's complexity and suggested ongoing activity that extended beyond historical storage. Hayes coordinated with international law enforcement agencies to trace the auction house contacts found in the basement documents. Several items matching descriptions from the cottage had appeared in high-end auction catalogs over the past year. 2 pieces had already been sold to private collectors in Switzerland and Monaco, raising questions about how items from the royal collection had entered the international art market. Sarah interviewed additional royal household staff members, focusing on those who had access to jewelry collections and knowledge of the cottage's existence. The interviews revealed a pattern of informal item removal that had accelerated following King Charles's death. Several staff members expressed concern about the lack of proper documentation for item movements during that chaotic period. Butler James Morton, who had served the royal family for over 20 years, provided crucial insight into the family's dynamics during the transition period. He described the stress and confusion that followed the king's passing, with various family members making decisions about personal effects and memorial items without following normal protocols. Morton specifically mentioned seeing Queen Camilla packing several jewelry boxes during the weeks following the funeral. When he offered to help with the official inventory process, she declined, saying she was handling certain items personally. He assumed this related to pieces with sentimental value that she wanted to keep secure during the difficult time. The investigation team discovered that 3 other properties had been purchased through similar shell company arrangements during the same time frame. 2 were located in Scotland while the 3rd was in Wales. Search warrants were being prepared for these locations, but the legal process was complicated by their connection to royal properties and the need for diplomatic sensitivity. Dr. Chen's forensic analysis identified DNA evidence on several items that matched samples from recent royal events. However, the presence of royal family DNA on royal jewelry was hardly surprising and did not necessarily indicate wrongdoing. More significant was the discovery of DNA from unknown individuals who had apparently handled the items recently. As the 3rd day concluded, Sarah realized the investigation was revealing a complex web of royal privilege, family stress, and possibly criminal activity. The challenge was determining where legitimate royal prerogatives ended and illegal behavior began. The cottage had clearly been used for more than simple storage, but proving criminal intent would require much more evidence. The media pressure continued to intensify, with speculation about the investigation's findings creating diplomatic concerns. Foreign governments that had given royal gifts were beginning to inquire about the status of their contributions to the royal collection. The investigation was rapidly evolving from a domestic law enforcement matter into an international diplomatic issue. Hayes called for additional resources and expertise as the investigation expanded beyond their initial scope. What had begun as a routine response to an anonymous tip was becoming one of the most significant investigations in British royal history, with implications that could affect the monarchy's standing both domestically and internationally. The breakthrough came on the 4th day when forensic accountants discovered a series of financial transactions that connected directly to Queen Camilla's personal accounts. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a specialist in financial crime investigation, had been analyzing bank records associated with the shell companies that owned the cottage. Her findings painted a troubling picture of systematic asset liquidation. Harper's analysis revealed that over the past 18 months, approximately £12 million had been transferred through various accounts connected to the cottage operation. The money had come from sales of high-value items to private collectors and auction houses across Europe and Asia. Most disturbing was the timing, which coincided exactly with the period when royal jewels had been moved to the cottage. Sarah studied the financial evidence with growing alarm. The transactions were sophisticated, designed to obscure the source and destination of funds while remaining technically legal. However, if the items being sold belonged to the Crown estate rather than being personal property, these sales could constitute theft of national treasures on an unprecedented scale. Wilson's analysis of the remaining hidden compartments in the cottage revealed additional evidence of the operation's scope. They found detailed shipping records showing that items had been sent to buyers in 6 different countries. Each shipment was carefully documented with photographs, insurance valuations, and customs declarations that described the items as personal effects rather than royal artifacts. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Thompson discovered a voice recording device hidden in the cottage's main sitting room. The device contained several hours of conversations that provided crucial insight into the operation's planning and execution. Most significantly, they clearly heard Queen Camilla's voice discussing the sale of specific items with unknown individuals. In the recordings, Camilla discussed her financial concerns following King Charles's death. She mentioned mounting personal debts and the need to secure her financial future independently of the royal allowances. The conversations revealed that she viewed certain pieces in the royal collection as rightfully hers, given her years of service to the crown and her personal sacrifices. Sarah listened to the recordings with professional detachment, but the content was shocking. Camilla spoke about items as if they were her personal property, discussing their sale as necessary for her financial security. She mentioned specific pieces by name, including several that had been reported as missing from official royal inventories. The most damaging recording captured a conversation between Camilla and someone identified only as David, who appeared to be coordinating the sales operation. David discussed the international market for royal artifacts and assured Camilla that buyers could be found who would keep their acquisitions private. The conversation included specific instructions for removing items from official inventories. Hayes realized they were now dealing with evidence of serious criminal activity that potentially involved the former Queen of England. The political implications were staggering, but the evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. He contacted the Attorney General's office to discuss the unprecedented legal situation they were facing. Dr. Chen's examination of the voice recordings revealed additional technical evidence. Background analysis of the audio identified specific locations where conversations had taken place, including rooms within Buckingham Palace and Clarence House. This suggested that planning for the operation had occurred within official, royal residences using royal resources. The investigation team discovered that David was David Pemberton, a former royal equerry who had maintained close connections with the royal household after his official retirement. Pemberton operated a discreet art consulting business that catered to wealthy collectors seeking unique pieces. His expertise in royal protocol and collections made him an ideal coordinator for the cottage operation. When police attempted to locate Pemberton for questioning, they discovered he had left the country 3 days earlier, traveling to Switzerland on a one-way ticket. His London office had been cleared out, with only empty filing cabinets remaining. A check with Swiss authorities revealed that he had not yet appeared at his declared destination, suggesting he was actively avoiding detection. Sarah's team found evidence that Pemberton had been systematically photographing and cataloging royal jewels during his time as an equerry. His official duties had given him access to secure storage areas and detailed knowledge of the Royal Collections Organization. He had apparently used this access to identify items that could be removed without immediate detection. The cottage's computer records revealed that Pemberton had been researching international art laws and export regulations for cultural artifacts. He had identified legal pathways for moving valuable items across borders while avoiding scrutiny from customs authorities. His planning had been meticulous and professional. Financial records showed that Pemberton had received substantial payments through the same shell company network used for the cottage operation. His compensation appeared to be a percentage of sale proceeds, suggesting he was working as a commission-based agent rather than a simple employee. This arrangement gave him strong financial incentive to maximize both the number and value of items sold. The investigation uncovered evidence that the operation had targeted specific types of jewelry that would be difficult to trace. Items chosen for sale typically lacked unique historical provenance or distinctive design features that would make them easily recognizable. This selection strategy suggested sophisticated understanding of the art market and collection management. Hayes authorized surveillance of other properties connected to the shell company network. The Scottish properties revealed similar hidden storage areas, though with fewer items remaining. Evidence suggested that these locations had been used earlier in the operation, with items already moved through the sales pipeline. Sarah interviewed additional royal household staff who had worked with Pemberton during his tenure as equerry. Several mentioned his unusual interest in the jewelry collections and his frequent questions about inventory procedures. Some had found his behavior concerning but had not reported it due to his official position and apparent authorization for his activities. The investigation revealed that Camilla had been under significant financial pressure following changes to royal allowances after Charles's death. Her personal spending habits maintained during her time as queen had continued despite reduced official income. The cottage operation appeared to be her solution to maintaining her lifestyle without relying entirely on family support. Dr. Harper's analysis showed that funds from the jewelry sales had been used to pay off personal debts, maintain properties, and support a lifestyle that would have been difficult to sustain on reduced royal allowances. The financial pressure provided clear motive for the systematic liquidation of royal assets. The recordings revealed that Camilla had initially resisted Pemberton's suggestions about selling items but had gradually been convinced by arguments about her financial needs and entitlement to compensation for her years of royal service. Pemberton had carefully cultivated her sense of grievance about her financial situation while positioning himself as a solution to her problems. As the fourth day concluded, Sarah faced the reality that they had uncovered evidence of a sophisticated theft operation involving the former Queen of England and a trusted royal insider. The evidence was substantial and damning, but prosecuting such high-profile individuals would present extraordinary challenges for the British legal system. The international implications were becoming clear as foreign governments began inquiring about items that had been given as state gifts to the British royal family. Several pieces found in the cottage had been presented by foreign dignitaries during official visits, making their unauthorized sale a potential diplomatic crisis affecting Britain's relationships with allied nations. The fifth day brought intense pressure from multiple directions as news of the investigation's scope began leaking to international media. Sarah arrived at Scotland Yard to find reporters from major newspapers and television networks gathered outside, all demanding information about what was being called the greatest royal scandal in modern British history. Inside, Hayes had assembled a crisis management team that included representatives from the Home Office, the Foreign Office, and the Attorney General's chambers. The political implications of potentially charging a former queen with theft were unprecedented in British constitutional law. Legal scholars were being consulted about procedures that had never been tested in practice. Dr. Chen presented her final forensic analysis of evidence collected from the cottage. Her team had identified fingerprints, DNA samples, and other physical evidence linking both Queen Camilla and David Pemberton directly to the handling of stolen items. The scientific evidence was overwhelming and would be difficult to challenge in court. The most significant breakthrough came when Swiss authorities located David Pemberton in Geneva. He had been arrested attempting to board a private flight to a non-extradition jurisdiction. Swiss police found him carrying detailed documentation about the cottage operation, including lists of buyers, sale prices, and plans for disposing of remaining inventory. Pemberton's arrest led to the discovery of additional storage facilities in Switzerland, where several high-value items from the royal collection were being held pending sale. Swiss authorities cooperated fully with the investigation, seizing items worth an estimated £8 million that were clearly identifiable as British royal artifacts. Among the recovered items was the legendary Alexandra emerald necklace, a piece that had belonged to Queen Alexandra and was considered one of the most historically significant items in the royal jewelry collection. Its presence in Switzerland provided irrefutable evidence that Crown estate property had been illegally removed from Britain. Sarah traveled to Geneva to interview Pemberton, who had agreed to cooperate with investigators in exchange for consideration during sentencing. His detailed confession revealed the full scope of the operation and confirmed Queen Camilla's central role in planning and authorizing the systematic theft of royal treasures. Pemberton explained that the operation had begun as a response to Camilla's genuine financial concerns, but had evolved into something much larger. He described how she had initially asked him to discreetly sell a few personal items but had gradually expanded the scope to include pieces from the official royal collection that she felt entitled to claim. The interview revealed that Camilla had justified the sales by arguing that many items had been gifts to her personally during her time as queen. She believed that her years of royal service entitled her to compensation that the official royal allowances did not adequately provide. Pemberton had encouraged these beliefs while pursuing his own financial interests. Pemberton provided detailed information about the buyers who had purchased stolen royal items. The client list included wealthy collectors from Russia, China, and the Middle East who were attracted by the item's royal provenance. Many buyers had been told the items were being sold with proper authorization from the royal family. The investigation uncovered evidence that some buyers had suspected the sales were unauthorized but had proceeded anyway. Due to the extraordinary nature of the items available, Several had specifically requested documentation proving the sales were legitimate, but had accepted Pemberton's assurances when such documentation could not be provided. Back in London, Hayes faced the unprecedented challenge of deciding whether to formally charge Queen Camilla with theft. The evidence was overwhelming, but the constitutional implications were staggering. Legal experts debated whether a former queen could be prosecuted like any other citizen or whether special procedures would be required. Sarah's team discovered that the cottage operation had been even more extensive than initially believed. Financial records showed that over 150 items had been sold over 18 months, generating proceeds of nearly £20 million. The scale of the theft was unprecedented in British criminal history. The investigation revealed that Camilla had used multiple justifications for her actions. She had convinced herself that many items were rightfully hers, that the royal family owed her compensation for her sacrifices, and that she was simply securing her financial future. Pemberton's recordings captured her expressing resentment about her reduced circumstances after Charles's death. International law enforcement agencies began tracing items that had been sold to buyers in various countries. The process of recovery would be complex and expensive, requiring diplomatic negotiations and legal proceedings in multiple jurisdictions. Some items might never be recovered if buyers refused to cooperate or had purchased them in good faith. The Attorney General's office concluded that Queen Camilla would indeed face criminal charges, despite her former royal status. The principle of equality before the law required that no one, regardless of their position, be exempt from prosecution for serious criminal offenses. The decision was unprecedented but legally sound. Hayes authorized the preparation of arrest warrants for both Queen Camilla and her remaining associates in the operation. The warrants would be executed simultaneously to prevent any attempt to flee or destroy additional evidence. The arrests would be conducted with appropriate dignity, given Camilla's former status, but she would be treated as any other defendant in the legal process. Sarah worked with international partners to coordinate the recovery of stolen items from buyers around the world. The process would take years to complete, but the cooperation from foreign governments was encouraging. Most nations recognized the importance of returning stolen cultural artifacts to their rightful owners. The investigation team discovered that several royal staff members had been aware of suspicious activity but had failed to report it due to their loyalty to the royal family and uncertainty about proper procedures. This revelation prompted discussions about new protocols for reporting potential misconduct within royal households. Dr. Chen's final evidence analysis confirmed that the cottage had been used as the central hub for the largest theft of royal artifacts in British history. The systematic nature of the operation, combined with the abuse of royal privilege and trust, made it particularly egregious from both legal and constitutional perspectives. As the fifth day concluded, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary nature of the case she had helped uncover. What had begun as a routine investigation into an anonymous tip had revealed a complex criminal conspiracy involving the former Queen of England and trusted royal insiders. The case would reshape how royal collections were managed and monitored. The evidence was overwhelming and the legal process would now begin in earnest. However, Sarah knew that the real challenge lay ahead, as the British legal system grappled with the unprecedented situation of prosecuting a former monarch for serious criminal offenses. The foundations of constitutional law were about to be tested in ways that had never been anticipated. The recovery of the royal jewels was nearly complete, but the broader implications for the monarchy's reputation and Britain's constitutional framework were only beginning to be understood. The investigation had succeeded in its primary objective, but the aftermath would continue to reverberate through British society for years to come. The final phase of the investigation began with the dramatic arrest of Queen Camilla at her private residence in Wiltshire. Sarah watched from a distance as her colleagues executed the warrant with appropriate ceremony and respect for her former royal status. Despite her fall from grace, protocol demanded that she be treated with dignity during the arrest process. Camilla maintained her composure throughout the arrest, speaking only to acknowledge that she understood the charges against her. Her legal team, led by one of Britain's most prominent criminal defense attorneys, had prepared her for this moment. She was transported to a secure facility where she would await arraignment on charges of theft, conspiracy, and abuse of public trust. The evidence against Camilla was overwhelming. Beyond the physical proof found at the cottage and Pemberton's detailed confession, financial records clearly showed her personal benefit from the sale of royal artifacts. Her own recorded conversations provided irrefutable evidence of her knowledge and participation in the criminal conspiracy. Hayes coordinated with the Crown Prosecution Service to ensure that the case would be handled with appropriate gravity while maintaining the principle of equal justice under law. The charges against a former queen were unprecedented, but the legal framework was clear. No one, regardless of their former status, could be exempt from criminal prosecution. The international recovery effort proved remarkably successful. Within 6 months of the initial arrests, over 90% of the stolen royal artifacts had been located and returned to Britain. Foreign governments and private collectors generally cooperated with recovery efforts, recognizing the importance of returning stolen cultural treasures to their rightful owners. Some of the most significant recoveries came from unexpected sources. A wealthy Russian collector voluntarily returned 3 items worth over £2 million after learning they had been stolen. A Chinese businessman who had purchased several pieces through legitimate auction houses also cooperated fully with investigators, returning the items without compensation. The cottage itself was thoroughly examined, one final time before being sealed as evidence. Dr. Chen's team found additional documentation hidden in the walls that provided insight into the psychological aspects of Camilla's descent into criminal behavior. Personal journals revealed her growing resentment about her financial situation and sense of entitlement to royal treasures. Pemberton's cooperation with investigators proved invaluable in understanding the full scope of the operation. His detailed knowledge of royal protocol and collection management had made the systematic theft possible. His testimony would be crucial in proving the premeditated nature of the crimes and Camilla's central role in their planning and execution. The trial preparations revealed additional evidence of the operation's sophisticated planning. Investigators found that Camilla and Pemberton had researched legal precedents for royal property disputes and had consulted with experts about the distinction between crown estate property and personal royal possessions. Their knowledge made their criminal intent even more clear. Public reaction to the revelations was mixed. Many British citizens expressed shock and disappointment that someone they had respected as queen could have committed such serious crimes. Others viewed the case as evidence that the royal family was not above the law and that justice applied equally to all citizens regardless of their status. International diplomatic implications were successfully managed through careful coordination between the Foreign Office and affected governments. Most foreign leaders understood that the thefts were the actions of individuals rather than official royal policy. The swift recovery efforts and transparent legal process helped maintain Britain's international relationships. The investigation revealed systemic weaknesses in royal collection management that required immediate attention. New protocols were implemented for tracking valuable items, authorizing their removal from official collections, and monitoring access to secure storage areas. The reforms were designed to prevent future incidents while preserving legitimate royal privileges. Sarah's team worked with royal household administrators to develop improved security procedures and staff training programs. The goal was to maintain appropriate access for legitimate royal activities while ensuring that valuable cultural artifacts were protected from theft or unauthorized disposal. The financial impact of the thefts was substantial but manageable. Insurance policies covered most of the stolen items' values, and the successful recovery effort minimized losses. However, the damage to the monarchy's reputation was more difficult to quantify and would require years of careful image management to fully address. Dr. Chen's final forensic report documented the recovery of 137 items with a total estimated value of £18 million. The successful investigation and recovery effort represented one of the largest cultural property crime cases in European history. The thoroughness of the evidence collection ensured that the legal proceedings would be based on solid scientific foundation. The cottage property was eventually sold, with proceeds being returned to the Crown estate as partial compensation for the thefts. The building's notorious history made it difficult to sell initially, but it was eventually purchased by a private collector interested in its unique place in British royal history. Pemberton was sentenced to 12 years in prison after pleading guilty to theft, conspiracy, and money laundering charges. His cooperation with investigators earned him some consideration during sentencing, but the scale of his crimes and abuse of royal trust warranted substantial punishment. He was also ordered to pay restitution for items that could not be recovered. Queen Camilla's trial became one of the most closely watched legal proceedings in British history. Despite her former royal status, she was treated like any other defendant with the same legal protections and procedures. Her defense team argued that she had been manipulated by Pemberton and had genuinely believed she was entitled to the items she had sold. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Sarah testified about the investigation's findings, presenting evidence that demonstrated the systematic and premeditated nature of the thefts. The recordings of Camilla's conversations proved particularly damaging, revealing her clear knowledge that her actions were unauthorized and potentially criminal. After a 6-week trial, Queen Camilla was convicted on all charges. The jury deliberated for only 3 days before reaching their verdict. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison, though she would be eligible for parole after serving half her sentence. The judge noted that her former royal status could not excuse her betrayal of public trust. The successful conclusion of the investigation represented a triumph for the principle of equal justice under law. Sarah reflected on how the case had demonstrated that Britain's legal system could function effectively even when dealing with unprecedented situations involving the highest levels of society. The recovery of the royal jewels was complete, but the broader implications of the case continued to influence royal protocol and public expectations of royal behavior. The investigation had shown that trust and privilege could not excuse criminal behavior, regardless of the perpetrator's former status or public service. Years later, Sarah would look back on the case as the most significant of her career. The investigation had required exceptional skill, diplomacy, and perseverance, but it had ultimately served the cause of justice while protecting Britain's cultural heritage. The recovered royal treasures were returned to their rightful place in the nation's collections, where they would be preserved for future generations to appreciate and enjoy.